Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm joined with a very special co-host.
Hi, I'm Lance Avery Morgan. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for being here, Lance. And we have a very special guest on today. It's our friend Holly Mills-Gardner. And one of the most important elements that anyone can have for an event is an MC, because MCs really set the tone. And I've had the good fortune of going to many events that Holly has MC'd over the years. And she does an excellent job of really setting the tone, making the audience engaged, and really reminding people of why they're there to begin with. So this is a really important element, and we really wanted to devote some time specifically to that in this episode. And with that, Holly, welcome, and we are so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you guys. It's so good to see both of your faces, and I'm so honored to get to be on your podcast. I'm so excited about it and talk about this subject that honestly, I have not done a podcast on this. So I'm so super excited to talk about it and hopefully share some things that our listener or your listeners could benefit from.
Absolutely. And the fact that you have not done one on this subject, because you've done so many interviews. So I feel like I've hit lightning in a bottle or found needle in a haystack in finding a new topic for you to talk about.
Yeah, it's so, it's something that I do all the time now. And it's, my career has just taken so many different paths through the last 25 years. And did I just say that out loud?
Yeah.
25 years. But it has, and I'm actually proud of the fact that I've done it this long, because I feel like that right there is something that I bring to the table every time I do host an event, or I'm a live MC for an event or for a charity or for a nonprofit. My experience, I feel like it's probably the number one asset that I can bring to the table. So 25 years is not something that I'm really that shy about saying.
So full disclosure, Holly started being an MC when she was a toddler. She was 2.5.
That's exactly right, Rob. I will be on your podcast anytime you want.
So, but the thing is that, I don't know if there's an MC school that people necessarily go to. Most people, and I found that most people who do the skills and the important jobs that make a gala successful, there's a path to actually getting there. So talk a little bit about, because you really do have an interesting path of how you did become a presenter and an MC. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Well, I think probably just to kind of pick a timeline, it would be the fact that I won Miss Texas USA in 1998. And of course, winning that title overnight, you become a public speaker, and it's a huge part of that job. So it's actually how you win the title. Honestly, I feel like the interview portion of that, the ability to speak in front of large audiences, small audiences, live television, all those aspects went into that job. And I did that job for 14 months. I actually went a little longer than a year. And every day it was something different. And it just prepared me, the public speaking side of it. I mean, I would be at the Capitol one day, or I would be at a school the next day, or I would be in front of a women's group the next day. And honestly, just that experience then catapulted me into, of course, my career of film and television just followed that. But where I really saw the change was the things that I was getting hired for in television started to shift. And I would say it shifted pretty quick. There's a lot of people that want to be an actress or want to go to LA, and I did that. But it was amazing that what I kept auditioning for and what I kept getting were the hosting roles. And honestly, the live hosting roles. So hosting live television shows, live events, sports, things like that are really hard to do as a host. And therefore, then it led into me becoming an MC at so many different events. And that's kind of how it happened. It just kind of catapulted into the fact that I was already doing that for so many years as Miss Texas. And of course, then following that. And then now it's just something that it seems like I'm doing one a month. So I feel like I'm whether I'm doing a podcast or whether I'm doing a live interview on TV, or I have just constantly, that's pretty much what I do, hosting on TV, hosting live events. It's just kind of what I've fallen into, and it's a niche that not everybody has the ability of doing. And it's super important that you can handle a live situation and a live audience. And that's a special thing, I think, that you can't go to school for. You're right.
Well, you can't. And Lance had a question.
Yeah, and I first met you when you were co-hosting with Jason Feinberg, our friend from the E Channel, the Miss
Yes.
USA pageant in the 2000s, and I was a judge. And I didn't know you that well then, and I was so impressed by, I mean, there was a lot of things that happened, to your point, of live TV, on the fly, on the go, and mics go out or people trip or whatever, and things happen. So what is your secret to sort of keeping your wonderful persona throughout all of that?
I would say the secret is to not try to have a secret. The secret is just
I
to
love
be
that.
myself and act like that audience, whether it's 150,000 people in the Texas Stadium, or if it's, 1 million people watching at home, or it's a 10-person audience, is to treat the audience as my best friend and be natural about it. And if a mic goes out, it's like, the mic just went out. So guess what? This is what you're going to do. I mean, we just continue to be natural and authentic and real in the moment, but you have to be able to think on your feet. And
Sure.
it's not one of the moments that no one will know that it happens when I'm working. No one knows that someone's yelling in my ear saying, "We can't hear you," So
Sure.
that's, or go to commercial right now, stop them from talking, things like that. It's the ability to just naturally and authentically be able to not let the audience know that there's ever a problem. And that comes, I think, with just that natural ability of using your personality and not being nervous, in the sense, just saying, I'll handle whatever happens. All right, drop the mic, you pick it right back up and make a joke about it and move on. So
The
that's kind of
unflappable Holly Mills-Gardner.
it.
Well, it is. In speaking of all that unflappability, is there like a particular like go-to that you have? Like if you know something's going awry, is there kind of a place that you as an MC can kind of start from to kind of calm everybody down, whether it's in front of you or behind the scenes? Because lots of things happen, especially when it's live. There are so many things outside of your control. What's one way that you found that, what, it's easy if I do X, I can really rein the room back in pretty quickly?
I feel like that it's always turning the attention back to whatever's super important um, for that setting. Let's say I'm on a teleprompter and the whole thing goes black. Okay, well, what was I talking about? And what's the most important thing that the viewers or the audience wants to hear about anyway? So maybe that it's kind of what they call filling. You better be able to fill, and you better be able to pull something out of a hat. And that, for me, it's always the authentic way of going back to what's the most important thing that I, as an audience member, would want to hear. So for me, if I was in the audience, what do I really want to know about? So if it's okay, everything just went black. Well, I'm interviewing this celebrity. Well, what do I really want to know about this celebrity anyway? Maybe those aren't the questions that were listed. Well, I'm going to just go for the natural questions, or what an audience member is probably searching for. And so that's what I always do, is in a situation like that, I always tend to just do that natural thing and take it to a personal level with that person or that audience, of how is this going to affect them. Let's say I'm at a charity event and something happens, then it's y'all know exactly what this is like, because I just relay it then back to something that's personal to them or personal to the charity. In a interview situation, it may be that I go to interviewing and asking them immediately about what's their hobbies outside of what they do, or how's their family, and how do things that are personal, that takes the audience back to forgetting about what was going on. So I do things like that for me, because those are the things that are just natural, what I would talk to my best friend about. And that's what I tend to do. I feel like a lot of times it's technical problems when I'm hosting an event, or let's say it's lighting issues, and I will crack jokes about things like that. So just because it's the obvious, and when someone freaks out, it makes it makes it awkward. So why do that? I've never understood why a host would do that. So, but they do. They do.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up because, people will ask me all the time, you must remember all the really bad things that happen. And the fact of the matter is, I rarely do unless someone makes a thing about it.
Right.
You
You
know,
probably people do not notice 90% of the time when I have major things going on, let's say with producers in my ears, or major things were happening during a show, that afterwards I'll say, "Oh my gosh, did y'all see that?" They'll be like, "No, we had no idea." So I'm like, "Yes, I did my job."
Really
So
easy.
for me, I just try to absolutely act like it wasn't even supposed to happen anyway. And so moving along and turning the table, or switching the conversation, or bringing up something else, or sending us to commercial, it's just something that experience and time, and having the confidence when that camera is on me, or when I'm standing in front of a live audience. It's just, I think, experience too is what's giving me the confidence to know that I can handle any situation I'm put in. So,
Speaking of that, were you one of these girls who stood in front of a mirror with a hairbrush and practice growing up, and with knowing that this is the path
um,
I want to go on?
I would laugh about that because it's just so unauthentic to me. But I will say that I did a lot of preparation, let's say prior to winning Miss Texas. I had a huge goal because I knew that that venue, that avenue would catapult me into a career that I wasn't really sure exactly where it would send me. And once I won that, I knew that it was like, okay, it's going to be what I make of this
Yep.
myself. And I realized that within the first week of that job. But prior to that, I will admit that yes, I made sure that I was prepared on every level. So there was, I'm sure, many a times that I stood in front of that mirror, and I do that to this day.
Yeah.
So prior to, now that I'm thinking about it, thank you, Lance. I'm just thinking about that out loud. Now that I'm thinking about that, especially really big shows and live audiences, the opening of every show is so important. So that's the where I probably put those little in preparations of myself in my room, in my dressing room, in the makeup room, or whatever, prior to going out. How would I as an audience member be the most affected at the very beginning? It's kind of like the saying of, you only get one first impression. Well, that's what I do every time I work.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's what's going to be the most impactful thing that I could say the very first sentence.
Right.
So how I say that, who's my audience, what's coming up after me and me speaking, it's all those things come into play. So I do prepare. And I am very prepared for every single show, every live event that I do. And that's just part of my job. And I feel like a host that doesn't prepare is not really a host. So,
Good point.
A-
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely true. And, I want to talk a little bit about, one of the things that we did want to kind of talk about today. So I know you primarily through the amazing job you have done over the last several years. And I don't even know how far back it goes, where you have MC Dancing with the Stars, which is
Oh,
one
yeah.
of the very, very best nonprofit galas in the state of Texas. And you have effortlessly and charmingly, and in fact, you two even co-emceed one year.
Fun.
Best
It's
night
a
of my life. Sharing a stage with Holly Mills-Gardner. And to your earlier point, your energy that you bring initially, it sets the tone from the get-go. So I think
Oh,
that is important to your earlier point of that energy, that wanting to be there, that really wanting to be there with the audience. It shines through with you, through
I'm
you a lot.
I'm so glad that you notice and that you think that. And yes, I love the Dancing with the Stars show. Not only is it probably, I feel like, one of the most glamorous events that I get to do and shows that I get to host. But it is such um, a giving back moment that I try to take those jobs over anything else. Anytime that I can give back to the community that I live in is honestly makes every ounce of work 50 times over more important to me. So I love doing that show, and it's elevated. I know that y'all have been there each year. It has elevated each year. I feel like since I took over as hosting the show, that was my goal. And I told them from the very beginning. And so pre-events, whether they're for nonprofits or whether if it's a live television show, I meet with producers, I meet with the teams, I meet with the charities, and I listen to their goals, what they have done in the past, where they feel like they're lacking. All those things I take into consideration because my goal is to make it bigger and better is and keep going every year. So which we have with that show, and I'm very excited about.
And can we say
We broke like major records this year for that show.
that's right. And it's more sparkling because of your outfits alone, beyond your personality.
Well, you know, there is that like Miss Texas thing that I'm kind of like, if you let me wear a sparkly gown, I'm doing it. So
Try and
I
stop
did
you.
say, I did when I came on as host. I said, this whole event needs to be elevated. This is like the most glamorous night of the year in Austin, Texas. So I elevated that the first year of, you know, having like this amazing Brazilian designer do my first dress. And then this year, y'all know I wore the like mirror ball dress that was made. And each year I try to elevate it and change it based on their theme. And I feel like over the last, maybe what has it been, 6 years now, I've hosted their show. I feel like each year it has elevated the audience. It's selling out quicker. People are buying the most fabulous dresses, and guys are coming black tie now. Where I will tell y'all, the first year, I actually was one of the dancers, one of the stars that danced in it. And I think there were people in blue jeans the year that I did it. And I thought, wait a second, this is like the most fabulous event ever. Why does the audience not get it?
Oh.
So I made sure, and I told the Center for Child Protection, I said, this needs to be, if you want to raise $3 million, you need to elevate the room to $3 million. So that's kind of been the goal, is to get them to, and I feel like it's happened. I feel like each year it's like more people want to come now because it's the night that they get to get so glamorous and they get to give back to the most amazing cause. And so it's kind of a win-win for the audience and for the center and for
And it's a
myself.
great show. The performances are always so surprising of who really has put in the time to learn their dance, who's
Yep.
committed, who sometimes phone it in. And I don't think there's that much of that anymore. I think people
No.
really know that they have to donate their time. They have to go to rehearsal. They've got to put on a showbiz performance.
It is, you know, the whole cast of that show, it is elevated to a level that like most people don't understand the preparation of that show alone. That event has grown, and I mean in size, not just audience wise, but performance wise. You know, having Glenn Ball part of it, and he has been co-hosting. I mean, we're talking about the best of professional ballroom dancers, choreographer. He's like the next level that they have, which I think has made the event even more spectacular having him, because it's elevated the entire cast, the entire production, the entire show. And therefore that elevates the audience to do more and participate more. And there's more eyes and ears. And then, you know, now we've taken it onto television. So that show has gone now live streaming, and we've done, you know, KXN, different things are covering it now. So it's just elevated as a whole, which in general then of course is elevating the cause. And I think this year we raised almost $3 million this year.
Which is amazing. And, you know, one thing I want to go back to that you were saying earlier, you said at the beginning of what you said, and that is you want to be there. And here's the deal. There are a lot of presenters and there are a lot of MCs that if they go into a nonprofit realm, if they're not feeling the cause, the audience can sense it, you know, from 50 miles away. They can really sense that.
100% they can. If you do not have a personal connection and a personal feeling of, what's the word I'm looking for, of a attachment to that cause, it is really hard. You cannot, you have to believe in what you're doing. And that's with any job that you do. So for me, I get to know, and I volunteer, and I learn, and I explore every ounce of what that charity is about. And if it's something I believe in, I'm all in. Yes, they can hire me and pay my fee and da, 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 whatever, and do those things. But for me personally, when it comes to something that is charitable and that is a nonprofit and then it's giving back and I'm asking people to spend their hard earned money for, I have to believe in it myself, and they're going to know that. Like, because that is easier for me to sell as the host to the audience when I can talk on a personal level about how it's impacted my life or how I've volunteered or I've learned about it. And this is what I've seen and change over the last 6 years that I've been involved, and how many children it's helping and where the dollars truly go. Um, and between myself and let's say the auctioneer of an event, that is our job. That's why we're hired. That's why they're not just getting some, you know, local somebody to stand up there and read off of a script. We rarely use a script. Y'all see in that show that I do, I don't really use a script the entire 3.5 hour show. And
And
it's
there's
one of
no
the longest
teleprompter either, right? I mean,
shows.
there's no teleprompter.
No
So
teleprompter. The
this is
only year we had to use a teleprompter was COVID, because
yeah.
the entire audience was at home on it was a full television show for 3.5 hours. So we used a teleprompter that year, even though I would look off and do my own thing. They'd be like, here goes Holly off the teleprompter. But anyway, yes. So no teleprompter for that show ever. And as I prefer, no teleprompter anyway. But it's a long show. So you have to know it. You have to have done your homework. You have to know the dancers. You have to know everything that they've done, because like you said earlier, Lance, those dancers and that cast, it's months and months and months. It's 6 months that they'll put in. They've been volunteering. They've been raising money on their own pages on the website. They've been going to the center themselves and learning about the charity. I mean, not to mention their rehearsals and their preparation to get out there and perform a true ballroom dance. I mean, it's hard to do, and it is an entire cast. It takes a full year to plan for that show. So they're already prepping for next year. I feel like we just did
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Like
Well,
we were just there.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
well, I want to ask you a question, and that really is, you were talking about preparedness. How do you prepare for like a gala differently than you would say a corporate gig or a television gig? Like, do you have a uniform approach, or do you kind of modulate just depending on the type of emceeing or hosting gig that you're doing?
First and foremost, it's what type of event is it? Is this a gala that is a formal type thing, or is this an afternoon lunch? I mean, there are several events that I will do. Let's say, for example, Cure de Chine. I'm a huge supporter of Cure de Chine. I host their ladies' lunch every year that is now like tripled in size and giving. So it's been amazing. But that's a completely different setting and a completely different audience. And that's the key for me to every single event, is to know my audience.
Mhm.
So is that only women? Is that women and men? Is that corporate world attendees? Is that you just have to know your audience. So what's appropriate? Dancing with the Stars, even though it is benefiting a children's charity, the audience that night is and the show itself that night allows me to kind of go out of the box, let's say with wardrobe and preparing for all the excitement of that night. We have the fun judges that we add with all the little commentary and things that we can kind of take it to a level that I definitely wouldn't take an afternoon luncheon with only women, of things like that. So I have to know my audience, and that's how I prepare, down to wardrobe. Wardrobe, I feel like, is so important for me, to do my best and to also have the audience responding to me in the way that I need them to. Wardrobe plays a huge, it sounds silly, but it plays a huge role, I feel like, in my performance and in how the audience pays attention and receives me. And I'm very particular about that, and what's appropriate. Do I wear the high neckline? Am I wearing long sleeves? Am I going to wear, a business suit look? Am I going to do all those things? I feel like are super important whenever I plan for an event, because I feel like that's the tone that sets the tone before I open my mouth. So I have to, down to my hair and makeup, all of it, because I feel like you only get one first impression.
You
So
do. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. And I absolutely don't think it's silly, because to me, your attire says three things. It respects three things. It respects the organization, it
Mhm.
respects, and it respects yourself, and it respects the occasion. It respects all the three of those things. And when you put thought into that, that's why we're doing this episode, is to how MCs set the tone. And you do such a good job with that, because you really expertly explained there are all different types of events. And, you want to show up as the best version of yourself, but you're a three-dimensional person. So you get to be really glamorous one night, but during a luncheon, you get to appeal to a different side of your personality.
That's right. And honestly, I think being Miss Texas, that is like a huge part of that job, is to know your audience. And every single day I was doing something different. And it was, of course, a team of people coaching me along every day, of saying, this is what you're wearing. This is the audience. This is what's appropriate. Da, da, da. I was 24 years old, so I was in a different point than I am now, that I I learned so much through that process. If it was, I did some huge, amazing things that year. And, I was asked by the president of the United States to speak at the America's Promise Summit, which I did along with Colin Powell. And to have that honor and that ability. Well, who's my audience? Okay, I've got the biggest of the audience that you can pick, of when it's the most important moment to be appropriate or to be professional or to be taken serious. And the words out of my mouth will come, but the first impression is always what I'm wearing and what do I look like, and the hair and the makeup. All those things come into play. And so for me, it's kind of like one of the first things that I tackle with an event. And I listen very carefully to, is there a theme? There's like garden party themes, and there's, this year at Dancing with the Stars was smoke and mirrors. So it was going to be a very, glamorous, uh, a little bit edgy this year, things like that, that it was okay and appropriate for me then to take it to another level, that I would never do at another event. So it was what was appropriate in it, and the audience responds to me in a different way, because they know that that's the theme and that's the way the room will be. So sometimes it's appropriate for me to get away with something a little more edgy that I would never do if I was speaking at the America's Promise Summit.
Right.
So
Well, one thing I want to ask you about is, because I've seen you do both types of gigs, one where you're solo and one where you have a co-MC. So
Mhm.
what are the differences, for you as an MC? What's the difference between you as a solo act versus you, with a co-pilot?
So I think number one thing is to be so natural and comfortable with that co-pilot. Like I hosted with you, Lance, and it was so easy for me, just because we have this friendship already that we had, that I was able just to play off of our natural friendship. And so that's my goal through having a co-host, is that the audience doesn't feel like it's, I read my line, you read your line, I read my line. No, I have to have that natural banter with them, because that's what makes the audience pay attention and engage. And that's a very hard thing to get when you have, let's say, a 5,000 person audience, or let's say, I've got 112,000 person audience at a UT football game where I'm hosting live sidelines, and I need 112,000 people to pay attention to me. that's a hard thing to do. And then you added a second person, let's say there, how do you keep that going and keep people interacted? Number one, you don't talk over each other and you respect that person. Have the ability to feed off of what they just said prior. You have to be listening and communicating with them and still engaging with the audience, because that right there is the first way that it goes downhill, is when you don't listen and you aren't natural with your conversation with them. So that's the way I handle it. When I'm on my own, I'm kind of like, it's my show. All right, I got it. When I've got a co-host, I mean, you have to have the ability to do that. And there's so many times that I do, have a co-host. So as bigger shows or longer shows, I typically will have a co-host.
Absolutely. So, let's talk about, like when an organization is approaching you or any other MC, what is one question a nonprofit should ask the MC when they're looking to hire them? What's the one thing that they really should be looking for?
Gosh, I think probably for me, I always ask the questions. I feel like that's the number one thing as a host, is that's what the actual employer or the nonprofit should be looking for, is the host that is asking the questions, not them. The host that's saying, what are your goals? What do you need out of me this year? What have you lacked in the past? How's the audience? How do they respond? Do they listen, or is everybody talking over? Do they get up and go to the bar? And when does that happen? And so I have such a huge part of the production meetings, and I take such a huge part in production meetings because I have hosted hundreds and hundreds of literally live events and shows, that I have now seen the pattern of what happens with an audience, how you lose an audience, how you gain them back, when to, let's say, do a funded need moment, take the break, when not to take a break and forego it and pretend that it never was supposed to happen. I have done that so many times because you do not want to slow down the momentum of the show when you have an audience. So for me, I feel like what they should be looking for is the host that comes in and takes control of the meeting, of saying, what are your goals? What do you need from a host? What did you lack before me? What's your goal? Like, how are we going to make this better? Where are you lacking? And those are the questions I feel like that when they have a host saying that and they care enough to reach their goals, then they're hiring the right person. So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Let me ask you something just from a personal standpoint, because obviously you've done this jillions of times. And so if you are not paid, which I know is rare, but say someone is emceeing and they're not compensated, sometimes I'm asked, well, how should we compensate that person? Or, how do you envision that? Should they be given a gift card? Should they be given something from Tiffany's? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. How do you see that as an MC and having seen just about every situation out there?
I feel like there the whole getting paid part is, for me, if an organization or a nonprofit or any other show production whatsoever, number one, doesn't want to pay for their MC, that's a huge red flag of an event that's not going to be at the level that they actually want it to be at. I mean, you get what you pay for. I mean, it is a known fact that the most important person at an event is the person who's controlling the room.
Mhm.
So that's your host, that's your MC. I feel like it's where you need to spend your money because it's going to come back tenfold. And so it's the first thing I say is, I don't get sticker shock with my fee, with my talent fee, because it's going to come back to you tenfold. And I hope that everybody that's ever worked with me, well, I feel like it rings true to itself, being that I have been hired back numerous year after
Yes,
year
yeah,
after year after year.
absolutely.
So because they saw that we took it from raising 1 million to raising 3 million, it's over the years and we just have continued to grow. I feel like paying for someone that is going to light your room up, that's going to engage your audience, that is going to control the room and help pull the strings, the heartstrings of the people in that audience to give to that cause, because that is the number one reason that we're there and
Right.
those settings and those events. And that's not something that just the average Joe who, this isn't what they do for a living. It's hard for them to accomplish. I mean,
Mhm.
it's really hard to do. And to help that charity reach their goal is very hard to do. And it takes a lot of preparation. I mean, I spend, like I said, the cast of Dancing with the Stars, just because we have talked about that already, we spend 6 months preparing for that show. I am learning. I know everything. The day that I go into that show, I know how much that charity's grown. I know what they've done and how much they've all the funds that came from last year. What did it go to? What have the dancers been doing? Who are the dancers? What are their backgrounds? How have they been involved? How's the audience been involved? Other audience members. I even take the seating chart and I find out who's going to be at the front tables of every single event that I host, because I like to interact that much with our audience. So I can call out by name, call out the people to thank them for being there. Because you and I both know it's not an easy or inexpensive task to go to these events and to give back and to open your hard-earned money wallets to
Mhm.
give to these charities. And we know there are families and people in our communities that they're the continual, they give to everything or they're at everything. And that's hard. So you want them to feel special and all those things. So I take all of those things and prep that way. So I share that with the charities when they hire me. And like, okay, well this is my fee, but this is why you're paying this, because I'm a professional at this. You're not
Right.
going to hire some just random person who says they're a spokesperson.
Well,
Right. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
I'm glad
Great.
that you brought that up because really there was one through line of everything you just said, and that really is that your time is valuable. And
Mhm.
yes, everyone has a nonprofit. There are lots of people that have
Oh,
nonprofits. You
yeah.
can't possibly help them all, and it's one of the ways to, especially if you've been doing something for a while, it's one way to be, well, how serious are you really about taking your event to the next level? And that's really where valuing someone's time, because you were talking about it's a period of months that you work with them. It's not
Oh yeah.
you walk in, you speak for 2 hours and you leave. That's not, it's not a game show. It's a,
And there's a lot
yeah.
of younger nonprofits that I had one just recently, that reached out to me to host their event that was coming up. And, I said, I will send you my fee and explain to you everything I do. And, they just were like, wow, we can't pay this or whatever. And I was like, I totally understand that it sounds and it looks like, I'm sure, sticker shock for you guys. However, these are the reasons why. And these are the reasons that I'm going to help you. What did you make last year?
Mhm.
Okay, I will guarantee you with this show that you are going to make my fee exponentially over, because of what I can bring to your podium, what I can bring to your live audience. And not to mention that I add all the social media into it and I help promote them, leading up to that event. And there's all these things it is my time and it is my job. And yes, there are so many times I'm working for nonprofits. And so that's kind of a very touchy thing. And Lance, I bringing up I have worked numerous things for free because I wanted to help them get started. I
Yes.
believed in that cause so much that I saw at the very beginning and then just said, you know what, this first year, you just pay my expenses only, not my talent fee. I've done those things before. So it's not like,
Sure.
I won't even talk to you unless you're paying me, my total fee. But I have done those things because I do believe in them so much and I do want to see them be successful. Or, I'll say, okay, what is your budget? Like, what did you have in your mind that you needed to pay a host?
Right.
Okay, well, there's been numerous things that in return, they're like, hey, we can't give you the cash up front, but we can do this and this and this. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That actually would work this year.
Right.
And then once you've gotten the wheels grease a little bit and you start going and you're making more at this. Next year when you budget, make sure you budget my fee in because we're going to then take it to the next level. And so I have done that so many times over the last 20 years. I can't even tell you. Um, but I feel like now, like especially in our community, and I feel like most of the ones that do hire me back, and then there are the ones that I choose to do a write off for. And I just say, look, I this one is so easy. It doesn't take me a lot of prep time. I want to give this as my donation to the charity, and I have done that more times than I can count. So, it is nice though, like as a host, when you show up and they have, just a few things for you. I mean, it's water, Advil. There's things like that I'm
It
like,
could be your
they don't
favorite
think
snack,
about you.
whatever it is.
They don't think about you that you don't have time to eat because while everyone's eating, you're talking. It's like the shows that prep me a meal to go when I leave or something like that.
Yeah.
Those little sweet touches are not forgotten or not appreciated. I'll tell you that. I so appreciate those things,
And
but I never asked for anything though.
absolutely. And you had mentioned social media. So since you first began doing this as Miss Texas in the late 90s, social media has come of age and it's a very vibrant part of what we all do and certainly a huge part of what you do. Explain to us about the sort of the time commitment that I don't think a lot of people understand who bring you on know that you're going to attach yourself to it in that way. I think that's such an added value that you offer.
Yes, and when I send over a contract, when we negotiate back and forth, when I'm hosting any show, whether it's television, whether it's an event, a gala, whatever it is, in that contract, that is part of it. I will say I will commit to however many social media posts prior to the show. It is my brand. Everything that I put out there, it's better be something that I believe in that I want to last forever. So
Yep.
I think very long and hard about what I'm agreeing to do, who I'm working for, who it's affiliated with, what are their other side affiliations, because all of that social media, unfortunately, it comes back to our own personal brand and our own personal life. And I have to think about my family and my children and all those things of every decision I make now in business, in the television world, or in hosting. It does affect my family. It does affect what people see or think or assume. And so I am very, very careful about the social media side and the things that I do share. And I feel like that's something that this generation needs to pay closer attention to, because once it's out there, you can't take it back. They think they can, but you can't. And it follows you forever. And it's honestly, it's setting the tone of who you are. Every single thing that you post sets the tone of who you are and what you stand for and what you believe in. So that in turn, as a host, goes back to others going, do we want to hire her? Do we want her part of this?
Sure.
So I think about all those things as if I might not be on their payroll, but that's my job as being contracted for every show I do, is that I treat that like I am on their payroll at all times. I think about all those, especially nonprofits. I think about all of those things because, it comes back to, oh, she's a host of that show, like you have to think about what's appropriate and what you're doing on social media in general. So yeah, social media is a big thing, but I do add that as such an added value of sharing and retweeting and resharing and stories and how many posts am I going to make prior to the show. And I feel like it's super important to not overdo things. You kind of want to tease things. And
Yes.
so we pre-discuss all of those things down to the days and the time that things go up, because the audience of that show is really what matters. And so, okay, well, who's your audience? It's age what? Okay, well, let's just prepare then prior to that show. When or does that age group hit the social media world? When do they look at Facebook? When do they look at Instagram? That's when those posts need to be made. That's when I need to agree for you guys that I'm going to make mine, because that's when it's going to hit your audience. That's why the shows are selling out in, tickets sell out in 2 days. That's why. And that's how we control that. And so that right there is just another added value that I bring to them as a host.
Well, I'm glad that you brought the setting the tone piece back with social media, because that's really kind of a full circle moment on our our conversation. I know we're coming on time here. So I want to end with one question, and you have a lot of experience, so I know that you'll have a unique answer. And that is, what is one thing all great galas and signature fundraising events have in common?
Wait, what did you say?
Besides hiring you, besides making the decision to hire you, which is the best decision they can make, in addition to that, what would it be?
Yeah, that was a drop the mic moment. Should we end the show right there? I love it. Well, let's see. All of them have in common, really great ones, is a great production team behind it. I can tell you, when I work with a team that is not prepared, and they don't do their homework prior to a show, and they don't have a very organized production, that's the make or break. So you can always tell when you go into a gala or into a live event, when it runs like clockwork and you don't know when there's any problem, and everything has been thought about and is perfection, and you want to take an audience to a level of feeling like they're living in a little dream, like you want them to be able to get dressed up and enjoy the night, and they have cocktails and they are dancing, and they're not doing what they're normally doing at home, and that's why you get them there to experience something, this beautiful evening. And I feel like the production of every single show, and that includes myself and whatever cast is involved, but the production, the planning, and the organization leading up to it, for example, sound and lighting, the host, the auctioneer, the way the tables are arranged, the how easy is it to check in, how easy is it to, do you got to use your phone, and is the audience not going to really pay attention to that phone? Well, I'm going to take over and make sure that we've got this so easy and it's all thought out, that there's no glitches in the auction, all kinds of things like that. It all comes down to production and preparation, and every great show has an amazing production team. So that's 100% sets the best shows apart and the best galas apart than from anything else.
Well, that's a mic drop moment,
Yeah,
I actually
true.
think. I mean,
Yeah.
the production, it's all about that. And then that way you can drop your mic and it doesn't screech too loud. It just hits the floor, everyone hears it, and then we
That's right. That's
Well,
right.
this was so fantastic, Holly. I hope you'll come on our show again, because this was so much fun.
I would love to. I would love to. Thank y'all so much. Thanks for having me. It's such an honor, pleasure to see y'all. I love seeing y'all all the time.
Thank you.
Y'all are
Same
such dear
here.
friends. Thank you.
A very bright light in the city and in the state. And not only do your outfits sparkle, you sparkle from within. And I think everyone who walks into a ballroom who may not be as familiar with you as we are, I think they do have this immediate sense of comfort that you're going to help guide them through the evening.
Yeah, I hope so. That's my goal every time I work. And honestly, when I'm not working, that's just who I am naturally. Y'all know that. I
Yep.
mean, if it's the three of us going to lunch at the Grove, I'm the same way that I am as I am at that gala. That's just who I am. And I feel like that's just a gift God gave me. And I think that's why this path has happened for me to be that person in an audience and to host shows like this. It's truly is authentically who I am. So I'm glad that you recognize it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Holly. And
All
for
right.
more information about Holly Mills-Gardner, find her on Instagram at Holly Mills-Gardner. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, with
Lance Avery Morgan,
reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.